Hello folks, I'm going to be talking about welders in this video because this topic has come up primarily in some of my welder review videos, but I think that this concept can pretty much apply to any product category. Whenever I point out negatives in the review of an inexpensive welder, people often defend the product saying that it's a cheap welder, not a $2,000 Miller, or they say that I'm expecting Ferrari performance out of a Ford Focus. These comments seem to assume an implied comparison to more expensive welders, and they object to that comparison. Obviously, if I do actually make any comparisons to a more expensive welder, people will say it's unfair to compare a cheap welder to an expensive one. As a prop for this video, I have a Miller Maxstar 210 on the bench. I no longer have the Amico TIG 225 that I previously reviewed. I sold it some time ago, but you can imagine it's sitting right here next to the Miller. I'll be using them as the example for this video. To be clear, I didn't actually compare these two in any way in my review of the Amico, and I've never actually reviewed the Miller. But would it actually be unfair to compare them? I think that it's totally fair to compare products of different price levels, and I think it can be helpful in certain situations. That doesn't mean that price isn't a factor in the comparison. Price is absolutely a huge factor when deciding on the value of a product, whether or not to recommend a product, and whether a person decides if a product is right for them. Now imagine that the Amico actually turned out to be better quality than the Miller. Would a comparison still be considered unfair? If so, to which one? As long as a review is honest about the capabilities and prices, then a comparison can be no less fair than the products themselves both existing as they are. In other words, both of these welders are available at the prices they are, they're capable of what they are, so just the fact that they exist isn't unfair, it just is. Granted, I understand that anyone in the market for a TIG welder isn't likely to be deciding between these two, and any comparison isn't likely to convince someone seriously considering one of these to buy the other one. But I still think it could be helpful or at least interesting to see how much or how little separates them beyond the massive price difference. On paper, these two welders could seem very similar to someone who is just starting out and doesn't know very much about the welding industry. Such a person could even reasonably believe that the Amico is better. It is rated at a higher output, so it wouldn't be strange for someone to legitimately expect it to perform the same, or even at a higher level than the Miller. And that's one reason the car analogy fails for me. Anyone who looks at the specs of a Ford Focus versus a Ferrari 458 would expect a performance difference. It's right there in black and white on the spec sheet. Yes, the Miller does have a few extra features, but otherwise, these two welders have very similar performance specs and not drastically different advertised capabilities. Despite the specs, I still didn't buy the Amico TIG 225 expecting it to be exactly the same as the Miller Maxstar, nor did I only point out its flaws because it didn't live up to that expectation. I think it's helpful to know just what about a welder is cheap, what problems you may run into, and what inconveniences you may have to deal with, regardless of the price level. When I review a product, I'm not going to ignore the things that bother me simply because the product is far less expensive than some alternative. I'm simply going to give my observations, and people can take price into account when considering how much the issues bother them. That's how I approach any review. Price will be taken into account when deciding the overall value of a product, but I'm still going to point out any issues I find, regardless of price. Now, don't think that this video means that I'm upset by these comments or that I'm discouraging anyone from speaking their mind. If you disagree, no problem. You are welcome to let me know. I just wanted to explain my thoughts and reasoning a bit. So hopefully this video clears up why I point out faults, both major and minor, on the products that I review, cheap or otherwise. I have no brand loyalty. I'm not out to blindly bash or praise any particular product, brand, or class of product. Even if I have preconceived notions when going into a video, I sometimes find myself surprised, pleasantly or otherwise. I would never lie or misrepresent any results. I simply want to provide my results, my thoughts, and my opinions. Everyone is absolutely free to make their own decision as to what's best for them. I only hope that the info I provide in my reviews might help someone to make a better decision and end up satisfied with whatever they spend their money on. You know, it's funny, when I started making this video, I never intended to actually do a comparison of these two welders. I just wanted to use them as an example of my point. But now I'm seriously tempted to get another Amico and do a full comparison. I could weld up some similar joints with each welder and see if we could actually tell a difference in the welds you get out of them. So what do you think? Sound interesting? I'll have to check out the prices and availability of the Amico TIG welders because they fluctuate a lot. But that's all I've got for now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching. Take care.